Dave McCoy, as he looked at this mountain and started thinking about how it skis and how you connect all the chairs, every time he made a decision, he said, how can we improve the skiing and eventually the riding experience? And he knew that it would be through a great lift service program.
Welcome to the storm. I'm your host, Stuart Winchester. You know, I cover a lot of ski areas, and they are all great in some way, but there are a few that are so distinctive, so atmospheric, and so important to the history and culture of U.S. skiing that I think that every single one of you should visit them at least once. And Mammoth Mountain, an Alterra and Ikon Pass flagship, a snowy and sunny California legend at the top of the Sierra Nevada, where ski season sometimes lasts into August, is one of those mountains. Before I take you west, I have a big announcement. You can now watch the Storm Skiing Podcast on YouTube or at stormskiing.com on Substack. If you listen to the podcast, nothing will change. The Storm will continue to live in audio form on Apple, Spotify, and wherever else you've been dialing into it. But there is now another way to consume the show, and it adds another dimension to our conversations, as we are now able to insert trail maps, photos, and other assets onto the screen as we are discussing them. It is a really cool experience, and I am fired up to bring the Storm to an entirely new audience and to new platforms, and to continue evolving the brand. You can subscribe to the Storm's YouTube channel for free at Storm Ski Journal. All future podcasts will post to YouTube, and we have some other content in the works for that platform as well. So please give me a follow so I can start to build up that channel. And of course, you can support the Storm's mission of independent ski journalism by upgrading to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast, which gets you access to 100% of the Storm's written content, past and present. You can also rep the Storm by swinging into the Storm store at stormskiing.myshopify.com, where you can pick up a hat, hoodie, shirt, sticker, and a bunch of other stuff. And you can follow the Storm on X or Instagram at Storm Ski Journal. And here is a bonus when you upgrade to the paid tier of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. For a limited time, when you upgrade to the paid version of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast, you will also get a free year of Slopes Premium. That is a $29.99 value, absolutely free. If you are not familiar with Slopes, it is the most incredible ski tracking app, which compiles your stats by day, by trip, by season, or by lifetime. Also very cool. Real-time tracking of your friends while you're at the hill, and at many resorts, one-touch contact with Ski Patrol. If you want to try Slopes, you can claim a free premium day pass by clicking on the link in the article that accompanies this podcast on stormskiing.com, or by clicking on the link on YouTube. All right, time for episode 198 of the Storm Skiing Journal and Podcast. Eric Clark, President and Chief Operating Officer of Mammoth and June Mountains, California. My guest today is the President and Chief Operating Officer of Mammoth and June Mountains, California. With 25 lifts serving 178 trails across more than 3,500 acres of terrain, Mammoth is one of the largest ski areas in the United States. June Mountain covers 1,500 acres on a 2,590-foot vertical drop. He has worked at Mammoth since 2013 and worked as Chief Operating Officer of Resort Services before his promotion to Interim Leader of Mammoth in 2023, and then to his current role last year. Eric Clark is my guest. Eric, welcome to the Storm. I am so fired up for this one. Everyone loves Mammoth, and I am long overdue to throw some love on this Alterra flagship. How you doing out in California today, Eric?
Stuart, I am doing great. Thank you very much, and really appreciate the time, and an honor to be here.
I want to get right into this because Alterra has just been pumping a ton of money into its mountains, especially Mammoth the last couple years. The headline for this winter is a brand new Lift 1. You get a new 6-pack there to replace a high-speed quad. Tell us about this upgrade, Eric, and how happy you are with it so far.
Yeah, we are really happy with this upgrade. And you think about it, what we just upgraded was a lift that was 29 years old. So to be able to have a brand new lift that has terminals, buildings at both the top and the bottom, and to be able to increase our uphill capacity is great. And not only that, we opened a day early from our schedule that we did a year and a half before, and we were
Nice.
under budget. So things are going really good with this lift.
Things have changed. The supply chains have smoothed out. That's fantastic news. For folks who are familiar with Mammoth but may not have been up there yet to see the new lift, are the load and unload terminals in the same place? Are there any sort of changes as skiers use the lift?
That's a great question. And there is a big change, but to the point about where the location is, it's at the same spot. So it runs from the same location that you got on before and goes up to the top at the same place. But what's changed is that you actually load the lift inside the building.
Oh, cool.
And so in doing that, we actually have a conveyor belt that takes you out onto the chair, and then that's how you get on. So something different for a lot of our skiers and riders here, but something that's very common over in the Europe world.
Yeah, I found that those work really well on those D-line lifts, particularly just at shuffling people to the end. I want to point out that this is a D-line lift, and these things are sweet. And I don't know if the average skier will notice, but from your point of view, Eric, as an operator, talk about these D-line lifts. As your second, I believe you put another one in at Canyon Express last year. So talk about these D-line lifts and just from an operations point of view, how much of an improvement these are.
Yeah, for us, it's a really big improvement because we've been able to build capabilities into the lift that where we can, first of all, park the chairs, half of them at the bottom terminal, half at the top terminal. And what that does for us, when we get those big storms that we're known for here in Mammoth, we actually, the ice isn't building up on the carriers. So we can open that much earlier with each of those lifts, 16 and chair one as well, now that we've done two of those lifts. And that alone just allows us to be more reliable, more consistent, and really provides a great capability for us. And I think that's one of the most exciting things that we have. It's a fast lift. It can run 6 meters per second. And we found that it's probably more productive right now at 5 meters, but we do run at 6 meters sometimes, just to make sure that we can get as many people on the lift and get used to it. So really fun to see these D lines come in, and they are so smooth. It is amazing riding up. You barely even feel going through a tower.
Yeah, they're incredible. I've not ridden your new D lines yet, but I have ridden a bunch of them at Boynes Mountains and others, and they just kind of float over the horizon like ships. It's really amazing. They are very expensive though. So if I'm just a regular Mammoth skier and I'm like, okay, they did a 4-person lift, they had a 4-person lift, and they put in a 6-person lift. The hourly capacity is a little more, but I don't know if it's hugely more. When Alterra is looking at this and deciding which lifts to upgrade, what's the calculus that goes into justifying that huge investment, Eric, for what might not be a huge capacity upgrade, but it is an experiential upgrade, but maybe one that not all skiers will necessarily notice outright?
Yeah, when we're continuously looking to improve our skiing and riding experience, and kind of the calculus that we do there is we know that lines are not something that's popular for people to wait in the lifts. And we have more people running through chair 16 and chair one than any other lift.
Mm-hmm.
So as we looked at that and said, okay, we have the opportunity to build this new capability. How much faster can we get people up the hill? And going from a 4-pack to a 6-pack, that automatically gets you another 25% uphill capacity,
Mm-hmm.
and the lift that goes faster. So we are seeing, we're upwards of 3,000 people an hour now with either of those lifts. So that's something that we look at and know that, hey, this is going to make the experience more fun. It's going to allow people to have more time on the run itself instead of being in lift lines.
Sometimes one of the positives of putting in a new lift is it changes skier patterns all around the mountain. With Broadway in place and Canyon in place and a little bit of time to think about those, has that taken pressure off, for example, Panorama, Gondola, or some of these other key lifts you have running that might start nearby those lifts? Just what have the flow through impacts been around the mountain of these two big upgrades?
Yeah, that's a really good point, because the reason why we did 16 first versus one, that they're both, really similar lifts in terms of how important they are. But we did 16 first because that really improved the capacity of getting out of our most popular portal, which is Canyon. Mammoth is really unique in the sense that we have various portals to access our mountain, and it's been designed, engineered for 6,000 people to go through Eagle, 12,000 people to go through Canyon, and then 6,000 up at Main Lodge.
Okay.
So we went to the most common platform first there, and really upgraded that, and it allowed us to get people out into the mountain to the various lifts that they really get to enjoy to ski. We do have a lot of return skiing on both of those lifts as well, because there's so many great runs off of them. So you see that in the numbers when we assess where people are going throughout the mountain as well.
So kind of a historical quirky fact for lift nerds here, that those two lifts replaced your last two Yan, I'm never sure how to say it, high speed lifts on the mountain. And these lifts were very problematic in the 90s, and there were a number of severe accidents, and they were all retrofit, and I understand they were safe when you were operating them. However, did the fact that those were those Yan high speeds, did that have anything to do with you wanting to move on to a new generation of lifts and just put that behind you? And I know you still have several Yans that are fixed grip, and those are a totally different thing, but was that a factor at all?
Yeah, really the biggest factor, back to what I was saying, was we were really looking at where people choose to access our mountain. And that is without a doubt the biggest factor as to why we went in that direction. But the point you're making is a really good one, because those lifts did go through a transformation even during that 28 years that we had them. They started out as a Yan lift, and then we reconfigured them with some Doppelmayr components and so forth. So it was a transformation that needed to happen to ensure the safety, and they were safe, and we were fine with that aspect. But it was nice to be able to upgrade and have that consistency in the Doppelmayr lift, that the D line, and we're really pleased to have that. Know that we'll have a lot less run time or downtime for our lifts because of it. So
yeah, nice to move on to the next generation. If you could humor me with a little Mammoth 101 here, Eric, I've been calling these lifts by their civilian names of Broadway and Canyon, and you've been referring to them by their numbers. If you look at the trail map, the numbers seem to be all over the place, and Mammoth has 1 million lifts, right? And you have one next to 23 and all this, but educate us on the numbers of the lifts and what those mean, and what you can read about the history of Mammoth by looking at those.
Yeah, great point. And it is really interesting on how internally the nomenclature for our lifts is different than how our guests look at our lifts. So I'll explain that first, in the sense that originally, when we have these, whenever we started putting in a detachable lift, we named the lift. And that obviously resonates more with our guests than it does with our long tenured experts here at the mountain. But so we see this where we are referring to the numbers and our guests are referring to the names. But what you'll see is that it's the detachables that are named. And the numbers that are remaining are those that aren't a detachable. So that helps you understand where it is, if you knew that. But as you look at the number represents when it first went in. And then we built upon that in terms of the numerical order and so forth. But it is like being bilingual when you're out talking to the guests. You gotta be able to make sure you understand that chair 3 is facelift.
Yeah. So getting back to Broadway and Lift One, I mean, that was the original lift at Mammoth. I think this is the third lift on that line. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what's the significance of kind of honoring that history and continuing to improve this mountain while retaining that old name?
It is the third, by the way, so you are
Okay.
correct. You could probably even go back further if you want to count a rope toe as well. But as we look at this and honoring that, it's the most important name in our history, in the sense that where it started and where it is now. Plus, when you look at it, we open that lift in early November, and a lot of times we don't close it until July.
Oh, wow.
So it has an amazing runtime to it,
Yeah.
and a lot of great skiing off of it, and great access to the rest of the mountain as well.
So Lift One's the headline. Everyone loves a new lift. It's a big deal. They're beautiful machines, and it gives you some great stories to talk about. You also did some upgrades or had some upgrades scheduled for lifts chairs 3 and 6. That's facelift and unbound. Two, and this is a quote from the Altair press release: improve the efficiency and reliability of those chair lifts. So tell us about the upgrades to those lifts and why, in this case, you were able to make that experiential change without having to buy a whole new lift and, frankly, saving a ton of money.
Yeah, these are two detachables that are of the same age, of 1 and 6 or 1 and 16, and but yet they weren't the transformed lift themselves. So we were able to come in and actually put in a whole new operating system. Kind of think about the operating system your computer had 28 years ago. And we were able to do that in order to have the appropriate sensors to determine if anything's out of alignment or anything to that nature, and really add to the life of the physical components of the lift. We change a lot of that out anyways, whether it's the drive, whether it's the shivs, whether, during our normal maintenance as well. So that's why we were able to come in and do that. And we really wanted to make sure that we had the most efficient operating system that we could, so that we keep that lift spinning, because they're both detachables and they're both really good lifts for access to our mountain.
When you consider this long term, Eric, I'm curious if you try to put a number on it. It seems as though detachables, at least the early generation about 40 years ago, are starting to really come out in earnest. Is there a time you assign to these when you say, okay, we're going to put this much money into 3 and 6, we want them to last another 20 years? Is there any sort of calculus like that before as you kind of think about modernizing this whole thing?
Yeah, there is a calculus to that, and as we look forward to what is our next project and so forth, we take all that into consideration as to what it is, and we feel really comfortable that this will be another 7 to 10 years in chair 6 and chair 3.
Yeah, it's amazing. As you look at, I hear all the time, unprompted, from people that Mammoth has the best lift system anywhere. Just the way that they come together and the way that they work together, it's just very well thought out. It is a massive system, and in some ways an aging system. You have a bunch of lifts that were built before the turn of the century. I think it's, you have 10 fixed grip lifts, 16 of them were built before the year 2000. I mean, new lifts are, I'm sure you're not going to tell me what this costs, but I'm going to guess $15 million for, this in Canyon or somewhere in that neighborhood. So as you look at kind of changing consumer expectations, right? And what people expect when they show up to a mountain, like a headline mountain like Mammoth, right? And they kind of expect these fast lifts. You still have all these fixed grips going all over the place. I think they're cool. I love them. Like chair 23, I thought that was awesome. The way it goes to the ridge. But, average consumer is like fast lifts. So how do you keep this whole thing moving, keep this whole thing running within a reasonable capital budget? I just can't even comprehend having to maintain this lift fleet, especially as some of these lifts are aging and are 40, 50 years old.
Yeah, great point again. And, when we made decisions to do 16 and 1, A lot of people from outside might say, well, why aren't you doing chairs 13 and 14 on the
Mhm.
backside? Because they're still so old and you could improve your capacity back there. But it all comes down to the fact that, with this RFID technology that we have and the ability to really be able to see how people move around the mountain and where they are, we're able to assess where we need to improve that experience. And now we even have the technology of looking at where are the lines forming, how long are they in lines, and so forth. So we get to continuously look at that and let the guests tell us where it's important, even though they might think that the oldest lift should be replaced. We don't look at it that way. We look at it in terms of consistency and reliability.
Mhm.
And I want to emphasize the point you made, and I really appreciate you saying it too, Stuart, in the sense that Dave McCoy, as he looked at this mountain and started thinking about how it skis and how you connect all the chairs, every time he made a decision, he said, how can we improve the skiing and eventually the riding experience?
Mhm.
And he knew that it would be through a great lift service program. And not only does it connect really well, but it also flexes with our big storms to where we can still open lower lifts on the mountains when you can't get up to the top. And
Mhm.
then you can open that up and it's a staged thing. So it's an amazing lift program. And we know that that's a legacy that Dave gave us, and we need to continuously improve upon that.
So let's talk about Dave, Eric, because it's really hard to tell the story of Mammoth without talking about Dave McCoy. And Rusty Gregory's been in this podcast, and he worked with Dave for years, and he gave us just an amazing tribute to Dave and described him. But that was a while ago, and we weren't specifically talking about Mammoth. So, what can you tell us about Dave, his original vision, and how he built the modern day Mammoth Mountain?
Yeah, first of all, Dave's original vision was when you really look into his history. As a kid, he came through the Eastern Sierra and went back up to the Pacific Northwest where he was going to school. But as soon as he got out of school, he came down, wanted to go to Independence and live in Independence. He actually received a ride from somebody and said, "Hey, I have to make a few stops along the way." And one of those stops was Mammoth Lakes. And as he was sitting out waiting for his ride, sitting in the sun, he had this feeling that he expressed that he's not sure what it was, but he knew he was going to be in Mammoth Lakes and how special a place it was. So it started way back then. And he went to Independence and eventually got up to Mammoth Lakes with his rope tow, and then was able to get the Forest Service permit in 1953. And his vision then, I've said it a couple times, is that he wanted to create a ski experience that he could invite all his friends to, and anybody that wanted to come be a part of it. Didn't have to be his friends.
Okay.
He really wanted to introduce the Eastern Sierra to so many people. And his vision is to he wakes up, he said he would wake up every single morning with a positive attitude and go out and try and contribute and do something positive to improve the experience. And that's something that we all look at and really honor and continue to hold deeply in our culture and make sure that we are honoring that. And his vision is to make the greatest ski experience he can.
It's one of America's great ski area founder stories. And almost every ski area we have was at some point the result of some kind of strapping individual going into the wilderness and making it happen. We've moved away from that for a lot of reasons. Cultural change, how much it costs to do a ski area, permitting process, environmental laws, all sorts of things play into that. And McCoy was part of that transition. He sold part of the mountain, a stake of it, to IntraWest in the 90s. Eventually, a group called Starwood bought it. Now it's owned by Alterra Mountain Company, of course, as of 2017. So it's not as though Mammoth is newly corporate. But as Mammoth really settles into being this flagship on the Ikon Pass, kind of seems like it's forever home. And as its prominence rises and more folks know about it, how do you keep that independent spirit alive, or that personality or that culture of Mammoth Mountain? How do you keep that? How do you keep Mammoth while still acknowledging Altera Mountain Company, Ikon Pass? You're part of all these things, and they're not going anywhere. But it still needs to be this distinct experience and honor that history. How do you do that, Eric?
Yeah, first of all, that is extremely important for us to keep the amazing culture that Dave McCoy created, and many other great leaders have continued here in Mammoth. And I view this as one of the most important aspects of our jobs as leaders here in Mammoth. We all are so honored to be a part of the history and culture of Mammoth that we have to be great stewards of our past. And at the same time, it's our job to continuously improve upon our experience and keep Mammoth at the forefront of the mountain resorts around the world. We talk about this all the time. And both with our shared services, which we refer to as Altera, and here in and amongst the resort, to make this a reality to where we really want to continue the authenticity of what Mammoth is and what it has been, but at the same time, trying to develop efficiency of scale across our resorts, but keep the flexibility of choice. We want deep industry expertise, which we've developed here at Mammoth, and of course with various partners throughout the industry, and have deep subject matter experience where somebody can bring in a technology that we couldn't have developed ourselves and be able to implement it. We know that managing through these paradoxes, like for instance, wanting the being able to have a really big company that has great capital, but not a lot of bureaucracy. We know that managing through these paradoxes is going to be hard. And we recognize that. And part of what our discussions are is that, hey, our business model is not an easy, we're decentralized and all decisions are made at the resort. We're not centralized and all decisions are made at our corporate office. We're in the middle. And that's a hard model, but very worth pursuing in the sense that you do get to keep it, the authenticity of what your resort is. And we've had that kind of ethos in our culture for a while. I'll bring you back to when Mammoth Resorts bought Bear and Snow Summit. One of the things that we, even though it was hard to bring them into our culture, we knew that we wanted to keep the claws in Bear. We didn't want to make Bear Mammoth. We wanted to just be able to do exactly as I said, create efficiency of scale across the resorts, but have the flexibility of choice to make sure that we are who we are. And that's, even though it's hard, it's a really fun model to pursue because you get that ownership and you get the ability to think about how Dave would have thought about it, how Rusty thinks about it, Mark, Ron, all of our great leaders in the past as well, and try and incorporate the new efficiencies that we have throughout Altera.
So if I can put that in terms more relevant to a typical skier, it sounds like what you're saying is, all right, if we need to look at new groomer mapping snow depth technology or talk to Doppelmayr about this, negotiate a new lift contract, that kind of stuff would live in corporate. But when you're talking about things like we stay open till June, sometimes August, we have killer terrain parks, we have certain spots in the village that are sort of the gathering spots, that would be more cultural and local. Is that sort of a fair analysis?
Yeah, that's a really good way to look at it in terms of, we are responsible for the experience here
Mm-hmm.
at Mammoth, and we have to figure out how to tap into the great resources that are provided to us through Altera in order to continue that experience. But we own that experience and need to, be accountable for it in terms of, and I liked the way you said it, until, hey, we're going to stay open till June, or we're going to stay open till July 4th. That's our decision here. And when to open and how to get everything open, it is all part of the Mammoth ethos versus Altera.
I know that a lot of you come to this podcast to hear directly from the best minds in skiing, which is great. But what if you actually want to find one of these folks to lead your mountain team? Well, let me tell you about my friends at Profile Search International, the only executive search and recruitment firm in the world that is 100% focused on the ski industry. Profile Search has used their intimate understanding of skiing and related industries and of the available candidates worldwide to place hundreds of transformational leaders at the best and most progressive ski areas over the past 30 years. Profile Search has offices in the US and Canada, and they can find and negotiate with the right leaders for your team. You can reach out to Profile Search directly at profilesearch.com. You can contact them by email or phone, or send me a note and I will connect you directly with this expert team. All right, back to Mammoth. Backing up here, we've been talking a lot about the history of Mammoth, and you've been there since 2013, which is either a long time or not a long time, depending on who you ask, right? Depending on how local the people are. And as a transplant myself, I get that all the time. But when did you come to Mammoth, and where did you grow up? Are you somewhat local, or give us your overview here, Ek?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick synopsis. So I actually grew up in Colorado.
Nice.
And it was in a place called Evergreen, Colorado, which is about 30 miles west of Denver. So I was into the foothills, and I was lucky enough to have some parents that like to be weekend warriors and drive up to Winter Park all the time. Got on to the race team there at Winter Park, and so started to develop my passion as a kid for skiing. I graduated from Colorado College, and I did ski race for Colorado College as well. And my degree was in economics, and the curriculum that we had at Colorado College at that time, I actually had to write a thesis for an undergrad, and I chose to write it on the Colorado ski industry. And after I graduated, the only thing I knew is that I wanted to live in the mountains. And so I moved up and found a job at Keystone, was the first place that I started working at. And I was there for 5 years, at Breckenridge for 5 years, then Winter Park for 10.
Oh, wow.
Which was a great experience too. And then Park City for a few years. And while I was at Park City, I got an incredible, somebody reaching out through LinkedIn and recruited me to come to Mammoth. And that's how I found Mammoth. And I just absolutely love it. And to your point earlier about what a great ski mountain it is just absolutely incredible. The snow is great. The amount of terrain, the lift access, everything is just, it's wonderful to be here and to be a part of this history and culture here that exists.
So you certainly have this awesome context to come from. And I love talking to people who grew up in Colorado, especially when they grew up in Colorado before it was Colorado, right? The way we think about it today. I mean, today, Colorado is 1 in 4 skier visits in the United States are in Colorado. We know about the mess that is I-70. We know the Summit County resorts are a zoo. What was Front Range skiing like when you were growing up there?
When I was growing up there, I-70 didn't have the always stop traffic in it, but it was hard to get up there, especially if it was snowing and so forth. So, and we would drive up every morning Saturday and back every Saturday night, every morning Sunday.
Oh, wow.
But you could do that.
Yeah.
And so you were capable of doing that. But then as I started to live up there, I'll share a quick story with you where when my wife was pregnant, and it actually was in the summertime, we would have to spend weekends near her birth date
Mm-hmm.
uh, down in Denver because we didn't want to get caught in the traffic and have a milepost baby. And there was no facilities to have a baby in Winter Park at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw it transition from that to where we actually had to make life decisions
And what ended
because
up
of the
happening
traffic.
with the
Uh,
baby?
we were able to. It was not a milepost baby.
Okay. As you've moved around, you've lived in a lot of mountain towns. There's been a ton of changes in mountain towns and mountain town living, and I know they're all different, and we're all different to begin with. But there's been some trends that have deeply impacted most Western mountain towns over the past 5 to 10 years, and we all know what they are. It's remote workers, it's short-term rentals, especially it's just real estate inflation. So specifically in Mammoth, I've heard less about it than say Park City or Jackson or Aspen. So lay this out for us. Since you arrived in 2013, how has Mammoth Lakes changed just from this affordability, culture, cost of living point of view? Or you can go back farther if you have that knowledge, but just how has it changed, and what are the main drivers there?
Yeah, well, as it's related to affordability, it is, I think it's important to acknowledge that the context of that this is not unique to Mammoth, but it's actually a macro issue throughout the United States. And I saw a transformation in the sense that it started kind of in ski towns where it was really hard to do that, but now it's
Mm-hmm.
really hard to afford housing anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that's been a big change. And but I go back to when I bought my first place, and it was in Keystone, by the way. The
Mm-hmm.
only way I could afford a place then was when I made the switch from the Keystone to Breckenridge. I cashed out my 401k, which they never tell you to do. But I was able to put a down payment on a 2 bedroom, one side of a duplex that was $125,000.
Wow.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that
Yeah.
without doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can't even imagine now what our young enthusiasts that want to come make a life and really make it a career and contribute to the continued experiences that people want to have, how difficult that is. And it's always been difficult in the ski towns, but it's even more so now. But what I am proud of is that how we are adjusting to that. And we're not solving the problem, but we're trying to make a difference. And so we know that Mammoth, as a company, we have to do so much to do that. And just recently, we purchased a motel essentially, and converted it into 72 different beds for our employees.
Mm-hmm.
That was millions of dollars that we had invested and did. Uh, Over the years, through the great leadership that we've had here, Rusty and Mark and Ron, uh, they have invested in. We have over 458 beds in the Mammoth Lakes area. And then
Mm-hmm.
we've done other things down in Bishop where we lease motels that are busy in the summertime, but not in
Yeah.
the wintertime, to provide even more. So we get into about 550 beds a year
Mm-hmm.
for our team. But at the same time, we're not doing enough because we don't have the ability to provide that young family that's coming up, wants to create a family, wants to, progress through the management hierarchy, and really support them in a great living scenario. They have so many challenges there. So we collaborate with the town on that. And the town has a great program that's called Housing Now that is multifaceted to where it's trying to get the young workforce housing, seasonal, but it's also trying to target every single thing they can and have different programs, whether it's lease subsidizing, whether it's building. We just passed a new measure L that allows 2% of our TOT to go to housing. And that won't have any restrictions on it with regards to the median average income that where you qualify. So it will allow us to have our higher paid managers get some help and really be able to provide some subsidy down the road. It's in the works from that sense, but you have to have a multi-pronged approach to it in order to really kind of solve this issue that you want people to be able to be comfortable. And it's a hard life because of the storms that do come in and the seasonality of our businesses and trying to carve it out here in the Eastern Sierra. But we want to do whatever we can to help people, and we'll continuously work on it. And we know we need to do more.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot going on in the town. So let's jump back up on the mountain. And I promise we'll talk about things other than chairlifts. But Eric, I want to ask, what's your wish list as you look and I've looked at your master plan and the scoping and that, but that was a pre-Altera master plan. So I'm curious right now where your thinking is of what your priorities would be as you look to replace and continue to evolve this lift fleet.
The immediate future, we are going to do a couple more renovations to our lifts, like chair 10, which is Gold Rush, and over on chair 4 as well. So we're going to start that this next summer. But our really kind of where we think we need to go is do a very similar lift that we've done with 1 and 16 at chair 2, which is called Stump Alley. Because both 16 and 1, you can get to the bottom of 2. And it's a really important, point of transitioning across the mountain for Mammoth. So that's something we're looking at, but we're also, this is a wish list. So, we look at our chair 8 as well, which is out of the canyon base area. And that is a lift that runs in our, most wicked storms that we get. We can run that lift because it doesn't have as much avalanche danger right above it. And it currently is a fixed grip. So you don't have to chip the grips during those storms. But you can open that up, and we're going to have more and more people accessing our resort through Canyon because we have more hotels being built in the village. So we know that we need to go there. But probably the most important one that is, up in age there too, in the upper 20s, is our panorama gondola. And that's such an important lift because we run it during the summertime too for scenic rides and so forth. So we're really looking at what can we do with that.
I will say if you ski off the top of the gondola and you look back at it and where it goes over that upper dry creek, that's what the run's called. I don't know if you have a different name for that valley. That is one of the most dramatic pictures in American skiing. I just love that, how it just hangs over that valley. It's so cool.
It is a long ways down as it comes over that. That's exactly right. I really love that too. And many different areas when you're hiking around here, you look over and you see that. Yeah. And you're just like, wow.
So let's talk about another portal that you mentioned, Eagle. And Rusty Gregory talked about this way back in 2017. And this is on your master plan. And he said, we need to turn Eagle into the gondola that it is. And I don't know what he meant by that. I don't know. I know sometimes these lifts, for example, Jackson Hole just opened a new chair that's designed for 6-place carriers, but they only put 4-place carriers on there. So I don't know if Eagle was designed to accommodate cabins or 6-place chairs, and you put 6-place chairs, which was currently on it. So talk about the potential for Eagle, maybe any clarity you can give us around what Rusty might have meant by that. And then the potential for this lift network that, according to the master plan, would go from the Eagle base up to the summit, where the panorama gondola meets in 3 stages. So what's the potential there and what's the current thinking there?
Yeah, the potential, first of all, Rusty is always a great visionary and, takes that ethos of Dave McCoy, how can I continuously improve upon ourselves? And when we look at the access points of both Eagle and Canyon, the idea was, and it was designed for this, was to have more of a taking that lift 15 and taking it to be a chondola
Mhm.
So that it would be an easy experience for people that haven't been on a lift, just learning how to ski and so forth and come up. Then you would actually extend the village gondola from the canyon portal.
Mm.
And they even built a terminal at the time when they built the village gondola into the infrastructure of where you disembark now at
Sure.
Canyon. It's built into there and it goes up to the top of 15.
Oh,
So, and that would be more of a
okay.
gondola, and then it makes its way up to the very top,
Okay.
it's stopping at either 10 or the top of 5. So, um, either of those, there's a lot of different combinations, but that's what that plan is as we look at it. And as I referenced earlier, we know that our opportunity is to increase our uphill capacity out of those portals because the
Mhm.
lodging is growing down there, and that's where the people have kind of really shown us that they want to access the mountain.
Yeah, I mean, look, Eric, it's easy for us to sit here and talk about $100 million projects, but the truth is, Alterra has done two very similar projects to what you just described in connecting the two sides of Palisades Tahoe with the base-to-base gondola and with the Wild Blue gondola at Steamboat. And that's a over 3 mile long or close to 3 mile long gondola that really changed the whole texture of that mountain. So they've shown the willingness to do it. Looking at all these projects we just thought about, is there any sense of priority to any one over the other?
The priorities right now are going to be kind of in the smaller. I'm not going to say a small zone, but when we look at 2, when we look at 8,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at our current gondola, that's going to be the line that we're going to kind of take to make sure that we're continuously improving upon those areas.
It sounds like you still think you have more downhill capacity, right? That the mountain can absorb maybe more people than you're putting on it. As far as when we start to talk about a second gondola to the summit and things of that nature, is the goal to just pump more people onto the mountain, or is it to say, okay, let's get these people out of the base and spread them out on this big mountain we have?
It's more of the latter.
Yeah.
Let's get them out of the base and spread them out. And this mountain ski is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it can handle so many people, and it's really designed. The lift structure right now is designed for 24,000 people at one time. But that's not where we go. That's not where we hit. But so it's a great experience once you get there. We just want to continuously make it easily accessible for everybody, and to be able to get onto the mountain, off of the mountain, in an easy and safe way.
Hey, Mammoth is awesome, but you know what happens when those monster storms roll across the Sierra Nevada? It gets cold out there. And for me, the first thing to freeze up has always been my feet. Or it used to be until I started rocking Hotronics ski boot foot warmers and heated socks. Now, when I boot up for the day, I plug in my batteries, I charge out into the storm, and frankly, I forget all about my formerly frozen feet. I've been on the heated boot warmers for years. I really like them and I recommend them. But lately, I've become heated sock bro. And the reason I like the heated socks is because they're awesome for things besides just skiing. Anytime you're going to be out for an extended period in the cold, tailgating, yard work, riding the bike, taking the kids to the park, you can throw these things on and you will stay warm. Couple cool features. The latest generation of Hotronics gear has a larger footprint, but a smaller, more anatomical battery that lasts up to 18 hours. And they are all Bluetooth enabled and manageable from an app on your smartphone. Stop enduring the elements. Fight back instead with Hotronics ski boot foot warmers and heated socks. You can go ahead and click on the link in the banner on the podcast article that accompanies this video to get started. All right, back to Mammoth. So a little bit of a footnote on lifts and something I don't talk about a lot, but I kind of noticed when I was prepping for this that I didn't see any carpets on the trail map. I thought, wow, that's weird for a mountain that big to not have any carpets. So I Googled online and I didn't see any on your report. And I saw people saying a lot of complaints about they have carpets, but only ski school can use them. What's the carpet situation at Mammoth?
Yeah, you just defined it actually,
Okay.
in the sense that we do have them in our ski school teaching areas,
Mm-hmm.
and the as is for Mammoth, that is kind of the restriction, is that you have to be in a lesson there. That it's not a lot of terrain, and it's really important for us to make sure that everybody's safe and we're introducing the sport correctly and so forth. But with that said, we actually have a public carpet over at June Mountain,
Okay.
and we have found that people really enjoy that aspect of being able to just go up, and it's a very small grade slope, so it's an amazing way to introduce people to the sport there. Not a long slope either, but one that is very inviting. And, we have kids ski free over there too. So that's one of our initiatives, to continuously try and make things more accessible. And we'll take a look at that. We'll
Yeah.
continuously look to see what we can do. And one of our plans is at the Eagle area. We would love to extend more of our carpets over there.
Mm-hmm.
We have the possibility of looking at adding some new beginner terrain, which would be really great
Yeah.
and important for us to be part of the new experience for people. When you are introducing your kids to the sport, where our ski instructor professionals have a really good process of getting people onto the mountain safely, and to where they'll really enjoy it for a lifetime.
So yeah, carpets down near the bottom of Eagle would be really cool, and I've seen little areas like that at ski areas that they take little utilized areas and make them into carpets. Looking more broadly at the footprint of Mammoth, is your boundary more or less set? Is there more in your Forest Service permit that you could potentially expand into? Is there any expansion potential at all, or is just the Mammoth we have is the Mammoth we're always going to have?
The current master plan that we have is the Mammoth we have, is the Mammoth we have. But there is potential,
Mm-hmm.
to where we could expand over in the chair 12, chair 13,
Mm-hmm.
over in that area. There's a potential of adjusting a master plan, and looking at that. But at this point in time, we do not have it in our master plan.
So as you look to use the mountain that you have, one thing that Mammoth is legendary for is terrain parks. And that's always been true. But I think it's even been more pronounced over the past decade as a lot of major ski areas have backed off of terrain parks and decided that the expense of them is not worth what it takes as far as the return they see themselves getting on. There's exceptions. Copper Mountain in Colorado does an excellent job. Brighton in Utah does an excellent job. But Mammoth is still one of these parks hubs, still one of the few places you can find a pipe, a mega pipe, a big one. And it's so cool to just watch those kids on the Unbound Express. I like riding the lift just to watch them. I'm not going in that pipe, but it's awesome. And you had these little pods all over the mountain. Talk about that parks culture, Eric, and why Mammoth has made that calculus that this is part of who we are and this is going to stay part of who we are, even though it's very expensive.
Yeah, when we look at the Unbound, we are so proud of the innovation that Unbound has done over the years, and Unbound is the brand for our parks.
Mm-hmm.
And it is really committed to many aspects of riding and free skiing as well. But the main thing is that we have an amazing progression where you can be in the most beginner park and have that experience, and then step up from there, and then step up again, and then step up again, and then step up again. To where you're finally at the 22-foot half pipe that you're competing in the Olympics,
Yeah.
and seeing that progression, and going through and seeing what they will affectionately refer to as the Groms, growing up, and getting that experience and being a part of it is so amazing. And that's what is a really big part of what Unbound is. But Unbound is also very committed to making sure that we are helping our athletes, and supporting our athletes to be some of the world's best. And that is something that we take pride in, and want to be a part of their progression, and making them the best and being the best in the world. So it's a something that, whether you look at the super parks that they used to do, or the Red Bull camps, or the just down to the 2.5-year-old that's riding her first box, you can find something. And we're proud of that, and think that we do that on many different levels. We do that with our race program. We do that with our Rangers program. We do that with so many different things. And it's really about the progression of the experiences. And we're going to stay committed to it for that reason.
So as you look at the scale of this, there's a couple lifts on Bound or 20 where you really have a lot of parks. They're almost all park lifts, right? But you have parks scattered all over the mountains. Can you give us a sense of the personnel that it takes, and the effort that it takes to build and maintain these throughout your long season?
Yeah, when we look at the Unbound itself, for instance, right now there's a winch cat out there trying to build that 22-foot pipe. It takes a lot of snow, and but there is a whole different department that is over 40 people strong in building the parks, and not just building them, but maintaining them. There's different cats that we have invested in it, so the capital investment is there. Those people that know how to drive that cats are different than the people that know how to do the incredible grooming out on our other groomed runs. So they're totally separate because of the commitment that you need to have. And then you're constantly building new features, and designing new features throughout the winter as well as the summer. So it's a big commitment, and it doesn't have as many people in the parks as you do on all the other runs. But we think that in our personal, we have so much space that we think we can do both.
So that's a big part of Mammoth's identity. The steeps are a big part of Mammoth's identity. The just busy California energy is a big part of Mammoth's identity. Let's talk about June. Let's give some respect to June, because I think June always gets overlooked. And, going back to what I said in the intro, this is almost a 2,600 vertical foot mountain, 1,500 acres. It's one of the 10 largest ski areas in California. It's the 8th largest in Alterra's portfolio. It's bigger than A Basin. It's bigger than Solitude. So looking at drawing back and looking at this, how do you and Alterra look at June? Is it an extension of Mammoth that you hope to utilize more? Is it its own thing and its own brand that you very much want people to think of distinctively? Because I feel like June it's a little bit like Pico in Vermont, where it's a great mountain. It's 2,000 vertical feet, but it's right next to Killington, which is the biggest ski area in the East. And they've both been co-owned for years and years and years. But people don't go to Pico because Killington's right there. If you took it and you moved it 50 miles away, it would be a major mountain. Maybe we think of June differently if it wasn't around the corner. I know it's 40 minutes or whatever, but you get what I'm saying. So how do you look at June currently, and what could June be long term?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to share with you that you can imagine we have a lot of different metrics that we look at to whatever you can measure, you can improve upon. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that June and the June team over there are constantly the number one in all of our company in net promoter score.
Oh, wow.
So when the guests talk about their experience, June ranks the highest.
Wow.
So we know we have a great experience over there, and you correctly kind of identified it in the sense that it's a big ski resort. And no, it's not as big as Mammoth, but it's got a lot of great terrain. The beauty is just unbelievable. The people are fantastic. And so we know that we've got a gem there. Then as from what it could be is that, we've got a project right now that we're working on, and have been over the years. The first thing that we had to do was find some water in order to get some snowmaking so that we can have a consistent product over there.
Mhm.
And the way that the June Mountain it is kind of exists is that we have a very old J1 chairlift in 1960s,
Right.
and everybody goes up that chair to get to then where you really go ski. In
Mhm.
big snow years, you can actually lap that chair, and it's got a really steep face and really
Mhm.
fun skiing.
Right.
But when it's like, for instance, you can't do that at this point in time.
Mhm.
So we know that we needed to get some investment in snowmaking. And then the next stage is to invest in a new J1
Okay.
so that we can actually get more people up to where you can, on a very frequent basis, have just
Mhm.
amazing experience. So that's what we envision. And we're going to have snowmaking up there. We're going to, look at, because we've already solved the water problem.
Mhm.
So now what's next is solving the snowmaking. And then after that, it would be putting in a new lift. After that, we would look to, work on a project to add more parking as well.
Okay.
Um, to your point about what do we envision, could it be a separate mountain? It certainly could be just because of the amazing terrain of what it is.
Mhm.
But what it needs is a little more bed base
Mm.
in June. There's certain land around the base area that is owned by others that does have some entitlements to build more lodging, and that would help it be on its own a little bit. But just the efficiencies we get running it and share, much like what we talked about, the scale of items and trying to be efficient, it allows us to do that. It could be all on its own for sure, but I
Mhm.
think it's much better suited with us. And when you think about Ikon experience, you come here, experience Mammoth, drive 40 minutes and experience June. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how we see it. But we know that June has a great future.
Yeah. It's a great mountain. When you look at the Ikon name, I think someone pulling into the parking lot and seeing that riblet double chair is their only way up might short circuit a little and be like, wait a minute, like what? Why is this on the Ikon pass? So talk to us about J1. And there's a curious history here. Where from 1986 to 96, there was a 20 passenger Funitel, basically a giant gondola that ran next to it. I'm not sure how much you know about that. I appreciate that was before your time. But talk to us a little bit more about the history of that lower mountain area where J1 runs, and then what the different options are that you're considering for a lift long term there.
Yeah, as we look at that lift, well, first of all, the history is similar to what we saw over here at Mammoth, where we had a Funitel kind of running in between Chair 2 parking lot and Main Lodge.
Mm-hmm.
And both of those, along with the one over at June, the engineering of it was not as sound as they had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why they've gone away from that at
Okay.
June. So you're left with the Riblet 1960 two passenger center bar chair. And again, our vision is to put the appropriate lift there, whether that is like a Chandala or whether it's a 4-pack, a 6-pack. I don't know that answer. We just know
Mm-hmm.
we need more uphill capacity, and we also need to move product and supplies up that on a
Okay.
more regular basis too. Because the majority of the skier services are at the chalet, which is at the top of that lift. So as we look at that and solve that, we will be kind of putting all those pieces together and try and figure out what the best way to go is.
I mean, Altera has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into its mountain. Do you have any insight for us into why June? I mean, its newest chairlift is from 1988. It's a Yan high speed quad. So why is June taking so long?
The reason why it's taking so long is because we didn't have the capacity to make snow.
Mm-hmm.
And we really needed to figure that out and to have a reliable and consistent ski area prior to investing more into the infrastructure.
So the snowmaking I think is key, and what's I mean, what seems logical to me looking at this is this canyon trail, this big blue that loops down from the upper area down to J1. Is that where you're focused first? Are there? And this looks pretty steep. The rest of it, are there other places on this face where you could put snowmaking?
That is exactly where we're focused.
Okay.
And to give you kind of a story of this year, the team kind of went through a heroic effort of making snow at either side, putting it in dump trucks, taking it into the run, and
Okay.
trying to get it. And we operate without Canyon Trail, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not nearly as convenient. Just because at the end of the day, when you're trying to move all the skiers off the hill, we were downloading them. But
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, we were able to open up Canyon Trail, and
Nice.
now the majority of them ski down that. We still download because like you pointed out, it's a blue run,
Mm-hmm.
and people might not feel comfortable doing that, so that they'll download on J1. But that is exactly where we'll focus the snowmaking.
So I want to linger on something. Last note on June that you said earlier. Kids 12 and under ski free. That's awesome. Is there a catch? Is that with the purchase of an adult pass? Is it? I assume that's not an Ikon pass. Just lay this out for us. What is this program? Who's eligible? How do you get it?
Yes, no catch to it whatsoever. 12 and under ski free. You just go to June and you get issued a pass
Mm-hmm.
if you're 12 and under, and you have access. It is as simple as that. It's something that when we looked at where we wanted to position June, we wanted to make it a mountain that would allow easier access for people to come enjoy skiing and riding. And that's how we saw that. We wanted to change it to, be more families and for people to be able to really kind of introduce themselves to the sport. And so that's part of the big reason why we do that over there.
Do you feel like enough people know about that?
When we look at our numbers, I think people are aware, but
Mm-hmm.
is it enough?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's once we invest in a lift, we'll definitely invest in getting that message out more.
Nice. Well, on the subject of passes, Icon Pass obviously is the season pass for Mammoth and June, unlimited on the full Icon Pass, unlimited with holiday blackouts on the Icon Base Pass. Altera has done a lot of tweaking to its access levels. Deer Valley, for example, even though it's Altera owned, is not unlimited on the Icon Pass. You just get 7 days. It's not on the base at all. Crystal has gone back and forth between unlimited on base to now just 5 days on base, and it was off the base. Anyway, there's a lot of different things they've tried. So my point is the company's not afraid to tweak access. Mammoth and June have been the same access since the Icon Pass debuted for the 2018 to 19 ski season. How often do you look at that? And are you happy overall with those access tiers for Mammoth and June on Icon?
Yeah, we look at that on a yearly basis
Mm-hmm.
and kind of assess it. And overall, we are extremely happy with the access that we sit at right now. And we're only looking at it from tweaking it from what our blackouts are. So
Mm-hmm.
the Icon Base Pass does have blackouts here, and that's the only restricted access we have. And for instance, we're going to have a small tweak this upcoming year to where starting, previously December 26th through the 31st were the blackouts. And next year, we will not be blacked out on the 26th.
Okay.
So that kind of small tweak we looked at and said, it doesn't make sense. People are traveling on this day, and with Christmas being the day before and so forth, we think that we should open that up. And we also look at how has that affected our visitation. And it's amazing to see, Stuart, when we look back on it. And before blackouts, you always had the biggest days were the 28th, 29th, right in there. Now
Mm-hmm.
the biggest days are January 3rd and 4th.
Okay.
So no matter where the holiday falls or anything to that extent, that's what you see, and you still have great visitation then. So it's definitely affected our consumer behavior, and spread it out so that people can have better experiences which is something that we look at and say that, you got to control the access at some point, but those are the only pinch points we had. And we're really pleased with the Ikon Pass and want to stay with all that access that we do have.
If you look at the greater impact of the Ikon Pass, what it's done is introduced Mammoth to a much wider variety of people, right? Because now if you have a Stratton Mountain Pass or a Sugar Bush Pass in Vermont, maybe you'd never heard of Mammoth Mountain, but you look at this menu of ski areas and you see it. I was talking to Rusty Gregory several years ago on the podcast, and he said, no one skis at Mammoth except for 38 million Californians, meaning it's busy, but that's just it. It's a Homer mountain. And he was exaggerating, of course, but has that profile changed as folks have bought this Ikon Pass across the country and started to consider Mammoth maybe alongside an option to Steamboat or Sun Valley or Winter Park that they maybe wouldn't have thought of it before?
Yeah, the profile has changed, but not in significant numbers. Mm-hmm. But still, the majority by far are Southern California. Mm-hmm. But what we have seen is Texas, New Jersey, cool. Colorado popping up on the map. Yeah. And so we're seeing that change and excited about that change to introduce, the incredible experience that we have here to so many more people.
Where are you at on the connectivity piece, Eric? Because if I fly in, I'm still 45 minutes away, right? So do I have to rent a car? Do you have buses? Do you have shuttles? Are you working with the hotels? Because there is a nice pedestrian base there. Once you get there, you, in theory, wouldn't need a car unless you wanted to go up to June. I don't know if there's shuttles between Mammoth and June, but talk about that connectivity piece, if that's already in place or if you have plans or thinking around that.
It is already in place, and it is great. Yeah. I mean, it's just outstanding in the sense that there's multiple options. You can rent a car, you can use this service, or you can even take taxi. There's even public transportation. Mm-hmm. And so really easy to get up to Mammoth. And even more so, the highway between Bishop and Mammoth is just outstanding. And you do go up quite a bit in elevation. You go from 3,500 to about 7,300. Wow. And the views of the Eastern Sierra, I mean, you're just getting excited the entire time that you're going up is just absolutely fantastic. It's not like I-70. There is no traffic. Right. There is, it's a pleasurable ride that you get really excited about.
No traffic in California. You don't hear that all the time. All right, Eric, last thing I want to ask you about today, because it's been in the headlines, is ski patrol. And just looking at Mammoth Mountain makes me anxious with all those upper mountain bowls. I mean, can you break down what does it take for your patrol to keep that place open and safe, especially when we see these storms where you get like 80 inches of snow? And you can include June in this as well. Just talk about your patrol, the size of it, their effort, their expertise. What can you tell us about this group of people who keep Mammoth going and what it takes to do that?
Stuart, I don't know if I could tell you enough about how the expertise, the professionalism, the commitment, the care, passion that our ski patrol has to provide terrain to our guests. Everything they do is so amazing. There's over 180 avalanche mitigation paths that they have to look at, and it always depends on what kind of storm comes in as to how many they have to look at. But that gives you an idea. This is a really big mountain, mm-hmm. and it has a lot of slides. And so we have, multiple programs to get out there and mitigate that avalanche danger with cross-cutting, with explosives, with artillery. And invest a lot in assessing what the dangers are, training programs, and so forth. But this team is an incredibly professional team and very committed to each other, very committed to our employees, and very committed to our guest experience. But what they have to go through on, and quite frankly, our entire operation, whether it's the grooming, whether it's the lift operations and digging out the lifts, whether it's the ski patrol, whether it's the lift maintenance, making sure every single day, all those people are out there and going through that process to make the mountain accessible and fun and as safe as possible.
Do you run all pro patrols at June and Mammoth? Do you have some volunteers? What's that mix look like?
It's all pro.
100%. Is that sort of philosophical? Is it just because the mountain is so particular? Is there a historical reason behind that?
It's not necessarily historical. I think it's that it might be more location than anything. Okay. You think about how far away Mammoth is from a big metropolitan area, and like for instance, Bear will have a lot of volunteers, and so will Palisades. Mm-hmm. But here in Mammoth, it has always been that way, and I think it's more of because who's here and committed and so forth.
All right, Eric, I told you I wouldn't keep you all day, and I went ahead and did it anyway. I know you got a 3,500 acre mountain to run and another one to run as well. So I'll let you go. But listen, I really cannot thank you enough for all the time and insight here. Really great stuff. And gosh, I just want to get back out to Mammoth now and check out the new lift and get some sunshine.
Stuart, I would love to get out there and show you that new lift and all the great runs that are here. So please let me know if you can make it, and we'd love to have you.
All right, that's Eric Clark, President and Chief Operating Officer of Mammoth and June Mountains, California. That was so fun, Eric. Thank you so much for rolling with that and being my first ever video guest on the Storm Skiing Podcast. If you are accustomed to listening to the podcast and you want to check out the video version, you can watch that video at stormskiing.com, on the Substack app, or on YouTube at Storm Ski Journal. You can also follow the Storm on X and Instagram at Storm Ski Journal, and subscribe to the Storm Skiing newsletter at stormskiing.com to support independent ski journalism. Lots more pods on the way in 2025. All will be on video. Until next time, stay well, stay safe. I'm Stuart Winchester, and I will talk to you again very soon.
The Storm Skiing Podcast is a Quicksilver Films production.